This video is for Tuesday, March 24th. I will try and get them on a day early. If you want to stay ahead, you're certainly welcome to. I'm going to go ahead and call this just day 2 video, and then the assignment will be day 2 assignment and day 2 worksheet. The only questions I had is, or have had, is regarding how this you upload your homework, where to upload it. Nothing about mathematics, so hopefully everything was straightforward, those first ones. I'm not going to give you any new identities, basically using the same ones. They're just a little more difficult identities to prove. 3 tricks, so I'll give you one on each one of these. The first one, obviously the more difficult side is the left side here. And we have 2 fractions, so what do you think we should do? Get a common denominator. So I'm going to multiply the right-hand side by 1 plus the cosine over 1 plus the cosine, and the left side by cosine over cosine. Hopefully I left myself enough room here. And I'm going to walk away because I walked over here without my glasses, and if I hit pause, it'll be another video. So give me 1 second. All right, sorry about that. And now the right-hand side. I don't know how these videos are working for you. I did order a relatively inexpensive piece of equipment that will let me make videos like Khan Academy. Won't that be exciting? See how that works. Okay, so there's my multiplying to get a common denominator, so it's going to give me cosine squared of x over, I'm just going to leave it in factored form for now. I may have to multiply it out, but let's just see what happens before we go through the trouble of doing that. And I'm going to have to FOIL the numerator here, so that's going to be 1 plus the inners and outers are both sine x, so it's going to be 2 sine of x. And then finally, sine squared x, all over that same common denominator. All right, now let's go ahead and combine those together. Cosine squared x plus 1 plus 2 sine x plus the sine squared of x, still over the cosine x plus times 1 plus sine x. All right, now in the numerator, if you look at the very first term and the very last term, we have the sine squared of x and the cosine squared of x. Taking that separately, that is equal to the Pythagorean identity. Cosine squared plus sine squared is equal to 1. So that's going to be 1 plus 2 sine x over, I'm just going to get lazy here, LCD. 1 plus 1, of course, is 2 plus 2 sine x all over my LCD. And factoring out the 2, I have 1 plus sine x all over the cosine of x times 1 plus sine x. And now the 1 plus sine of x is a common factor, leaving 2 over the cosine of x, which is 2 cosecant of x. Now, pretty straightforward and easy for me. I've done a lot of these. The most important thing is try something. Do not just sit and stare at it. Work with the more complex side usually. If you have 2 fractions, a rule of thumb is get a common denominator, add them together, and see what happens. And always be looking for your Pythagorean identities. All right, the next one over here, I don't have 2 fractions. I just have 1 fraction equaling another fraction. But I look at the right-hand side and I see that this is a single denominator. So I'm going to use that side instead of the 1 plus cosine, because I only have 1 factor in the numerator. This used to be 2 fractions. I'm going to do the opposite of what I just did over here, and I'm going to break that apart. Make it 1 over the sine of x minus the cosine of x over the sine of x. That is the cosecant of x. And I'm not sure where this is going to go for me. The cosine of x over the sine of x is the cotangent of x, and I'm not really getting anywhere. So we have to be willing to say, oh, that wasn't the right way to go. So I'm going to look over here now. The second trick, that's another trick also, taking this part into the two fractions. If I see this, I can always multiply by the conjugate. That will get you somewhere most times. So 1 minus the cosine of x over 1 minus the cosine of x. And I did this for a reason, because it just might not work sometimes for you. Don't give up. Be willing to erase it. Go back and try something different. All right, so multiplying by multiplying by the conjugate, 1 minus cosine of x, I'm going to distribute over here. That's going to give me sine of x minus sine of x cosine of x over 1 inners and outers will add to 0 minus cosine squared of x. This looks like Pythagorean identity to me. We've got sine squared x plus cosine squared x equals 1. Solve this for the sine squared of x, we get exactly what we have. So I can replace 1 minus the cosine squared of x with sine squared of x. So I'm going to have sine of x minus sine x cosine x, and I'm going to have to factor that out again, because what I have now is sine squared x. So I'm going to take that sine x that I distributed in out, 1 minus cosine of x, and actually if I looked where I was going, I should have just left it there to begin with, over sine squared of x. Now remember, sine squared of x is sine of x times sine of x. So this sine cancels out that sine, and we're left with 1 minus cosine of x all over sine of x. And that's a lot of fun. All right, third one down here. We have the left side looking a little more confusing than the right-hand side, that's for sure. Let's see, we can get a common denominator and add these two fractions together. Or we could multiply by the conjugate here and see what happens. Either one's a fine option. Let's see. It doesn't matter what we do. Let's go ahead and make this 1 plus cosine x over 1 plus cosine x, of course, times 1, minus sine squared x over 1 plus cosine x. And let's see, if I put that all together, that really doesn't do a darn thing for me. So I'm going to abandon that, and I'm going to go ahead and try and multiply this guy by the conjugate of 1 minus cosine squared of x. So 1 minus sine squared x over 1 plus cosine x, multiplying by the conjugate, 1 minus cosine of x over 1 minus cosine of x. So we've got 1 minus, let's see, let's just go ahead and not distribute it over this time because I didn't need to last time. Probably will need to this time. Foiling this, 1 inners and outers add to 0 minus cosine squared x. And exactly what we used last time over here, that is sine squared of x. So I'm going to have 1 minus sine squared of x times 1 minus the cosine of x over 1 minus cosine squared, no, sine squared of x. Sine squared of x cancels with sine squared of x, so I have 1 minus, sorry about that, 1 minus the quantity, 1 minus the cosine of x, distribute that negative over, 1 minus 1 plus cosine of x, and that gives me cosine of x, which is exactly what I was going for. All right, they're going to get a little more difficult than this even, so again, no new identities. Make sure you get these things memorized. Try and work around with them. I will be posting the solutions to what is today's video, day 1, not this video that you're watching, the previous one, tomorrow after they are assigned. So I'd like you to try them, put them in, and then I'll put my solutions up. And I will also be posting today worksheet day 2 for this video. All right, have fun and ask me any questions you can. I'll get to them as soon as I can.